Chelsea. And I'm Sammy. And this is
Deepish.
Hi, guys.
Oh!
Jinx, you owe me a soda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Stop.
10.
What do you say?
You have to say stop or else you owe me a soda.
Oh, I never did it like that. It was just you owe me a soda and then the end.
Yeah, no, then you count to 10. And then if they don't say stop, they owe you something.
Ooh.
So Diet Coke or nothing.
Okay, I'll get you one. Woo.
Thanks. Guys, we just had the best night of our lives.
I know. We
had Brittany Marie on the podcast today, and you guys need to go follow her. If you're a real one, you heard us talk about her a couple episodes back when Chelsea said she found this girl on TikTok that used to work at the Mayan and said it was like Vanderpump Rules on steroids. Mm-hmm. She talks all about Utah culture, and the whole time the Mayan was open, she worked there in all different sides of the business.
Literally was a diver at one point. It is gold. But also she just knew so much about Utah culture in general.
Not even just knowing everything about it. I love her opinion and thoughts. I'm like, I want to know your thoughts on everything.
She's so funny.
She's so funny. And just witty. The witty banter, it's just wit that you can't develop. It just comes naturally.
Totally. And she also has autism. So she goes into depth with that, her diagnosis, and I feel like I learned so much about autism, and I thought that was really interesting. We could have done a whole episode just on autism, but we touched on so many different topics. We need to have her back on for sure.
I know, we for sure need to do a part 2 because there's still so much we didn't get into.
You guys are gonna laugh, so you have to just listen to the whole thing because there's points where I couldn't even talk. I'm just giggling at her.
Yeah, and you guys should go follow her because she's a good follow.
Oh,
she genuinely makes me laugh. Her and her fiance do things, and she just has these unfiltered thoughts. I want you guys to just clean your kitchen, turn this on, and just listen the whole way through because it's a good listen for sure. So we really think you guys are gonna love this episode. And here is Britty. Okay, how are you feeling? Are you comfy? Are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Do you like where the mic stand is and everything?
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay, perfect. It's real.
Yeah,
nice.
I just want you to be
respectable.
Okay, right. Brittany. Wait, Brittany. Britty.
It's Britty, but you go by Britty.
We are off to a great start.
Yeah,
Britty.
You can't even say my name.
Please put this in. Britty.
Britty.
Yeah.
I love that.
I introduce myself and people think I'm saying pretty. So Brittany is my legal name, but my stage name is Britty Marie. So people who know me in real life know me as Britty Marie, and people who know me online know me as Bemusing. I literally never use my legal name ever.
What do your friends call you?
Britty.
Britty. Your family?
Britty.
Okay.
Really? Okay, so Britty it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Where did the bemusing come from?
Oh, that's a great question. So growing up, I always had this joke with my friends where I felt like I was always someone else's muse. I was never able to create my own content. It was always just that I was performing someone else's content. Or even with guys, I would date guys and then they would break up with me. And then later they'd be like, but I learned so much from
She
you.
was my muse.
Yeah, you inspired me and blah, blah. I'm like, obviously not enough because you didn't want to marry me or anything. And so Bemusing was kind of this combination of the muse that I always was for somebody else, and then I finally got to be my own creator, but I still sort of embody this muse character, and I am constantly bemused by life. I just think it's the weirdest thing.
Yes.
Yeah, humans are weird, life is weird, everything is weird. And I'm here for it.
And Brittany.
Britty.
Oh my hell, I'm leaving. Why do I want to
You're
say
fired.
Brit? I want to
Britty,
say
you
like
want to be my new co-host?
Yeah,
Okay, sweet. Do you know how to say Britty?
Britty.
Okay, you're hired.
oh my gosh.
Just say let's say
Mitty,
like
Britty.
bitty.
Bitty, Britty.
Like a bitty Britty. The itty bitty Britty committee.
But
Okay, now we can actually get started.
Yeah.
Do you know how, now
Again,
that you know how to say Britty?
Now that those
Britty,
outtakes
Britty,
were
Britty,
absolute gold.
No, we're recording
throwing
and I'm
that in.
leaving.
Oh,
that in
good.
there. I am leaving
yeah.
that in there.
I always feel like the pre-show is better than the actual.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
All right.
Sorry, we
Okay.
can get started.
We're good.
Okay. Britty, welcome to Deepish. I want to know a little bit more about you. You're not originally from Utah. You moved here.
Right. Technically, I'm not from here. I was born and raised in Fairfax, Virginia. But that being said, my entire extended family is from Utah. When we moved to Virginia, it was for my dad's work. And we moved back as soon as he was able to get a job here.
Are your parents from Utah?
Yes.
So then you came back to Utah. How was that? You're in the middle of elementary. Do you have memories of that at all?
I try and block out most of my childhood memories because it was very traumatic. I'm only mostly joking. I do, actually. So it was interesting because most of my friends back in Virginia, I remember distinctly, everyone went to Catholic school. There are no Catholics in Utah that I'm aware of. Actually, I have one Catholic friend. Shout out to Jordan. So in Virginia, everyone wore these cute uniforms that were like pee and poop, brown and yellow.
Okay.
Can I say pee and poop?
Yes.
But I was so jealous because they all got to wear uniforms and ride on a bus and go to a private Catholic school. And I was going to public school like a plebe. And then we moved here and then everyone was Mormon. But we had come back here a lot when I was a kid. So I knew my family really well. I was very excited to be here with all of my cousins and aunts and uncles because my mom's side of the family is huge. Typical Mormon, thousands of kids everywhere. It was a good time.
How many siblings do you have?
We are legion. So there's 5 in my family. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and then they have kids now, and I don't. So I failed, obviously, by Mormon standards. But I'm not a Mormon anymore, so it's fine.
You come to elementary school. Do you remember a little bit of a culture shock? Whoa, where are the pee and poop colored uniforms?
Where's the pee and poop? No, I would say more than a culture shock. It was more so that I think in elementary school is when I started to kind of realize that I was probably different than the other kids, and not in the way of religion, but in the way of I was an undiagnosed autistic kid. I just struggled socially quite a bit, and I never understood why because I wasn't diagnosed until I was in my 30s. But more than the culture shock, I think that's when I started to realize I'm like, hey, I think I'm different. But I didn't know why, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So
did you find your tribe at that point? Did you have a few good buddies, or was it always kind of I feel other?
I tried. I thought that I had friends. That's kind of the sad thing. And I think a lot of autistic females can relate to where you thought you had friends and then you realize that you were just sort of a tool that other girls would use when they were mad at their real friends. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I thought I had this best friend, but she actually had a real best friend. And the only time that she ever wanted to hang out with me really was when her and her best friend were on the outs. And so I got left out a lot. It was really confusing because, first of all, you're a kid. Second of all, the social nuances of life completely escaped me. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older and got into theater that I finally found my people. That's where I found my tribe, was in theater.
And when was that?
I've been performing since I was 8, 9. So it wasn't that long after moving here.
And then you found it and you're like, whoa, these people understand me.
More so, for sure. There is a huge population of neurodiverse people in the theater community. There's a lot of neurodiversity among artists, and that's not a real shock, but especially among theater performers. I'd say even more than film actors. It's just a really fertile autism
breeding ground.
Yeah.
So going back to you realizing that you felt different, what type of things were you noticing at that time where you felt like, oh, maybe I am different than these other kids?
A lot of it is internal. You feel as though everyone else was given some kind of playbook because you look around and it seems like there's a set of rules. And it seems like everyone else inherently knows what those rules are, but you don't know what those rules are. And so you're trying to watch the people around you and learn what these rules are. And a lot of times it's by trial and error. And a lot of that is you end up getting into trouble or you get misunderstood quite a bit, not only by your peers, but misunderstood by teachers. And I would say that's probably the biggest thing is that like, it didn't make sense to me that everyone else just sort of knew how to behave, how to make friends, how to keep friends, how to interact socially, how to date. Because I really didn't do any of that. I didn't even really start dating until I was a senior in high school and not really until I was out of high school.
Did you want to date before that, or were you just not interested?
Oh, no, I was interested.
Okay. But you were like, I don't know how to flirt with guys, or I don't know what I'm doing wrong, that type of thing.
Yeah, I hate using this analogy, but, well, okay, two things. One, if you've ever watched Bob's Burgers, Tina, there's so much relatability in Tina for me. And she's boy crazy. She is obsessed with boys and butts. And I get it. Butts are so interesting. And boys have always been an obsession. But yeah, no one wanted to date me. This is sad but true kind of fact. I don't think I went to any of my own high school dances unless they were girls' choice. I don't think I got asked to a single. No, that's not true. I got asked to one by a guy who I absolutely did not want to go with. I'm sorry if you're watching. I'm sure you're a very nice person, but like I did not want to go with him. But it was one of those things where my mom was like, you're going to go to the dance with that boy.
It's like fairy tale romantic.
No.
Like, my crush is taking me to the prom. It was like, oh gosh, I have to get dressed up and go with this guy.
No, the boy that I was desperately hoping would take me was the boy that I was in love with since I was like 15. And I had asked him to a girls' choice dance, and we went, and he's just the greatest guy. And then he actually ended up passing away when I was like 24 or 26 or something like that. It was super traumatic. But that's who I would have wanted to go with. But no. My life does not work like that.
Not in this story.
No.
Okay.
My life reads better than fiction, but not the kind of rom-com fiction where the girl gets the guy.
Okay.
Yeah,
not that
more
one.
just like a comedy.
A comedy of errors. Yeah. A dramedy, as it were. Yeah.
So how were your parents at this point? Were they like, we kind of noticed some differences, or were they just like, you're fine, get over it?
So that's the interesting thing. Autism is highly heritable, meaning there's a strong genetic component to it. We may not know, they haven't isolated the autism gene. That's a whole other conversation. But we do know, because we've observed, that if a parent is autistic, it's a lot more likely that they're going to have an autistic kid. So my personal belief is that my mother is on the spectrum. I think she has maybe started to kind of come around to the idea that she might be as well. The thing is, when you have an undiagnosed autistic parent, especially with women, where historically women have just been so underdiagnosed, right? She didn't know she was autistic. So if you look at it this way, nothing I did was going to seem weird because it
was so normal to her.
Right. And I would say that there's a lot of autism on my mom's side of the family. That's my observation. And so nothing I did seemed weird. Nothing my siblings did seemed weird because you don't know what you don't know.
Totally. But you seem so sociable and intelligent, funny, smart, socially aware. Even just sitting here with you, do you feel like that was developed through the years? Like, hey, I really have to learn this? Or did it just get easier as you got older?
A couple of things. I think that your question is really interesting because I think that a lot of people have this question when they meet me. And I like getting this question because it allows me to sort of expound upon what autism is and what it's not. So I think a lot of times when people think about autism, they think about, I don't want to set the worst case scenario, but we'll just use, by the way, I'm going to use language that the autistic community may find not great. But here's my thing. When autistic people are talking to autistic people, we get it. But I feel like it's more important for autistic people to help educate people who aren't autistic.
You kind of have to dumb it down for us.
It's not even dumbing it down, but it's language that an autistic person might be like, that's ableist. You know what? If it gets the point across and it makes it easier to digest, then why are we talking in code? Because that doesn't help anyone understand anybody. So that's my caveat before I jump into this. When people think about autism, they think about these more severe cases. They may even think about a nephew that they have that is nonverbal and smashes his head against a wall and will require 24-hour care for the rest of their lives. And historically, we have looked at autism through the male archetype. So we look at it how it presents in boys. In fact, it hasn't been until recently that, you know, the medical community has even really started to accept that autism even exists in women. That used to be, oh, women don't have autism. It's only a male thing, right?
Women can't vote. They should be in the kitchen.
Well, according to RFK, autistic people will never play baseball or write a poem or pay taxes, which is good to hear because I'm really tired of paying taxes.
Yeah. Well, can we get that in writing?
Yeah, like, promise? So women historically just sort of slip through the cracks. But my point is to say that a lot of times when people think about autistic people that they know, or even people who watch Love on the Spectrum, right? And they see that, that is one facet of autism. That is one expression of autism. But oftentimes what they're seeing is autism plus. And when I say autism plus, what I mean is autism plus something like a learning disability, right? Some kind of intellectual diminishment. And so I am of average or slightly above average IQ, and my autism is not necessarily affected or vice versa in that particular way. And so when people are like, but that doesn't make sense because you seem so articulate, it's like, right. Think of it more like autism is the blueprint of my brain and my experience of the world around me, and less about the outward manifestation of what you're seeing. Because there are a lot of us that are incredibly socially, what's the opposite of inept? Ept?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just
that a
socially
word?
intelligent.
Yeah.
Socially aware.
However, just because I'm really good at talking, just because I'm very personable, just because I can make friends very easily, doesn't mean that internally it isn't just a freaking struggle, right? Like it isn't just a bunch of monkeys in a circus in my head having to analyze and think and work through everything that I'm saying and think about my tone of voice and this idea of masking. Because I think if left to my own devices, if we were just having a normal Britty conversation, then I probably wouldn't be as animated. My tone would probably be a lot more just monotone. But I've learned over the years how to do this. And by the way, everyone does this. This isn't just an autistic thing, right? When you
introvert, extrovert, like
or even the way we talk. Like we don't talk to our spouses the same way that we talk to our boss. We just don't. Everyone understands this concept of sort of adjusting our behavior and the way that we are when we're in certain groups. But autistic people maybe just to a greater extent, which is why I say it's not as if autistic people are experiencing things that allistic meaning non-autistic. It's not that we're experiencing things that allistic people aren't. It just means that we might be experiencing them with more intensity and more frequency. Like you've been stressed out, I've been stressed out. You need to recharge, I need to recharge. Sometimes I'm sure the lights in your house, you want to just smash them all, right? You're like, I can't do this anymore. So it's not like we're living some altered reality necessarily.
What do you feel like some of the biggest misconceptions are around autism? And also, do you have a hard time holding empathy for people who are very uneducated on this topic? When people ask you questions or even just the stereotypes around autism, is it hard to be patient with it while people are uneducated on the topic?
I laugh because according to the world, autistic people don't have empathy, right? I'm just a robot.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
no, I don't struggle with that at all because I just don't. It's not something that I possess. Yeah. It's not a problem for me. But that's a misconception right there, is that we're robots, that we have no empathy. I'm like, we're not sociopaths. We're not psychopaths. And in fact, a lot of studies have shown that autistic people have more empathy. They have more of these mirror neurons, if you want to look at it that way, which basically a mirror neuron is when a little baby is growing up and learning to read the faces of its parents, the baby will see the parents smile. And these mirror neurons will kind of turn on in the baby's brain, and the baby will go, you smile, I smile. So you smile at your baby smiles back at you. And this is part of how children become socialized. And so it's different for autistic kids, but we have a great deal of empathy. In fact, there's this theory called the intense universe theory, which basically means autistic people are experiencing the same world that everyone else is, just with the volume turned up to like 50. And that includes everything.
Just every emotion.
You
every-
Sights,
deeper.
smells, emotions, everything else. Again, it's a social pragmatic learning disorder. That's a misconception. I think that people think of it as an intellectual disability, and it's not. You can have autism plus the intellectual disability, like we talked about, right? Which can happen quite often. But just as often, if not more, you have people who are quote unquote normal in terms of intellect and everything else, but they're also autistic. Again, think of it more like allistic people get a certain blueprint on their brain. Like when their brain is developing, they get one set of blueprints. Autistic people get another set of blueprints, okay? We're both building houses, which end up being our brains and the way that everything is structured and how we see the world or whatever. But that's why when people say that autism is something that you can get from the drinking water or whatever, it's just not true.
What do you feel like with this might be a hot button vaccine?
Oh no. For legal purposes, I don't have an opinion on the subject.
No comment. Okay, that's
but
fine.
generally speaking, again, autism is heritable. We've seen it. This is what I'll say. There is no strong data that I'm aware of that has definitively proven or even really led us to think that autism can be caused by something like a vaccine. Now, however, here's my caveat. So I believe in a combination of nature and nurture, which means you might have a brain that has an autistic blueprint, right? But if some environmental factor doesn't set it off, you may never outwardly manifest those autistic behaviors the way that someone else might. So I think it's a combination. I think that it has a genetic foundation, and I think that it can be exacerbated by environmental factors. So I do think it's worth looking into what those environmental factors are. But
So environmental factors, meaning your mom could potentially be on the spectrum. Do you feel like that's an environmental factor of like she acted a certain way, she thought it was normal, you acted a certain way? Is that what you mean? Like your environment, the people you're surrounded with?
yeah, I mean, that is one thing. It's like if you are being raised by an autistic parent, even if you're not autistic, you may pick up some of their isms, even if you're not on the spectrum. But also, it could be something like when I was 18 months old, I got meningitis. The fact that I came out of it relatively unscathed, as far as we could tell, is kind of wild. But who's to say that that didn't exacerbate?
Okay, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
because
You
when
know?
you were saying the environmental, I thought like the vaccine where something comes in and
Could
basically
potentially
triggers that or brings that out or turns it on.
I used to work for one of the foremost experts in the country, maybe even in the world, on autism, which is how I was able to glean a lot of my knowledge, because before the age of 30, I didn't know anything about autism either, which is coming back to your question of like, do I have empathy? I have all the empathy in the world because I'm still on my journey. Like I'm still trying to figure it out. There's still stuff that I don't understand. And so it would be pretty messed up of me to expect that everyone around me who has time,
Yeah.
the average person who has time to just sit down and research autism in depth.
Totally.
And unless you have a kid or a family member or a spouse who's on the spectrum, it never is relevant in your life.
Yeah, I would just hate for like me to be having a conversation with someone who does have autism and for them to feel misunderstood or like I'm putting them in a box or something.
And you know what? Sometimes that happens, but here's my personal opinion on the subject, and other people might disagree with this, but I kind of hate it when people who are in groups like this autistic sort of marginalized group, I sort of think it's not cool to be a dick. Like,
Hot take.
Hot take. I feel like it's sort of not cool to be a dick to someone.
Yeah.
When, especially because I've had people say stuff to me like, you don't look autistic. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, what am I supposed
Thanks.
to be like? Yeah.
I'm like, are you thinking of another? Okay, I'm not even going to go there. Right. But the point is, and everyone should be doing this. Like, this is a huge hot take for everyone in the world. Instead of assuming the worst of that person and thinking that they're just being a dick to you, why not ask a clarifying question?
Totally.
Yeah, I love that perspective.
Just like, what do you mean? Or
Explain that. Or
yeah, I want to
what was your
understand.
experience with that?
Yeah, because I feel like at the bottom of most of those questions, they are trying to understand. because they have a certain idea about what it is and they're coming from their worldview, and then they say something and you're like, oh, not quite.
Yeah.
But if you shut them down by being a dick,
yeah,
that's the end of the conversation. And then we don't get anywhere.
That is just human to human interaction.
the world will be a better place.
I know. When the autistic kid is teaching everybody else how to behave, that's why I studied communications in school and I study human behavior just because I need to understand.
So you found out you're autistic in your 30s. Was there something that led you down that route of self-discovery of I might have this?
Yeah, so I was dating a guy at the time and he has a nephew who is on the spectrum. What we would have formerly classified as Asperger's, but we don't use that classification anymore. It's just autism spectrum disorder, and it covers the entire spectrum. And when people think of spectrum, they think of it like not very autistic, very autistic, and that's not it at all. The spectrum looks like a prism. And by a prism, I mean you could have high intellect, low verbal skills. Your verbal skills could be high, but you might have really big sensory issues. Think of it like a constellation of stars more than like not autistic, very autistic. Or you can use my favorite scale, which is when people say, oh, so you have mild autism. I'm like, which implies, and someone else's joke was, that implies that somewhere out there, there's like a flaming hot Cheeto version of autism. I'm a mild. I'm a chili verde autist, if you will. I don't even remember what the question was. What was the question?
What was the question?
How did I figure out I was autistic?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm literally just like, you talk and I'm just going to sit here and listen because you're hilarious.
I love it.
And I can talk. I got the hyper-verbal form of autism.
So that's the part of your...
Yeah, I'm over here.
constellation.
It's like the ability to talk for hours on end without breathing. So yeah, I was dating a guy. He has a nephew who's autistic. And I was having what I now know is an autistic meltdown one night. And after I had sort of cried myself out, he turned to me and he was like, you know, there's this book that I think you should read. I'm like, that's so random. Why are we talking about books? And he's just like, don't get mad. I just think that there's this book you should read. And I'm like, okay, what book? What book are we going to read? And he's like, I think it's called like Aspergirls. It's one of the first Aspergirls. Instead of like I just figured that out.
Like Asperger for girls?
That didn't make any sense until just now.
No, what did you think it was?
Is that an epiphany?
No, I don't know. I was just like Aspergirls. But it's like, okay, because it's Asperger's, because people sometimes pronounce Asperger's as Asperger's.
Okay.
But it's Aspergirls. Arguably not a good title. He was like, it's a book about women with autism. I was like, you think I have autism? And I was so mad because, again, I was coming from my worldview of what autism was. And I'm like, you think I have autism? How dare you? And then I read the book and I was like, maybe I have autism.
Did it feel very...
Being seen for the first time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Very validating.
Unfortunately. Yeah, no, it was. Now, does everything fit? No, because that's like saying every allistic person is going to have the same experience. But there was so much that fit and made sense. And I was just like, okay, it's probably true. And then I did some more research, waited a few years, and then went and was formally diagnosed when I was like 32.
And what does that mean? Do they just sit in a room with you and they're just like, or what does that even look like?
Have you ever seen when they have chimps in a
cage?
Play.
With, like one
just
side
like give you
mirror.
blocks and stuff and just like see how you it was nothing like that. No, it was kind of sort of like that a little bit. The funny thing is, and maybe it's changed since I was diagnosed because it has been a handful of years, but really the diagnostic criteria was geared towards children. And so you do a lot of kid stuff. Like if you have a book and they're like, here's a picture book. Now you tell me what's going on in the story. Just like, yeah, bet. You know, like take this thing. They ask you a lot about your life because a lot of females that are being diagnosed, a lot of it is a self-inventory. You just kind of talk about your lived experience growing up. And the crazy thing is, I think for a lot of us, even after you get that diagnosis, I know I felt this way. There's this sort of imposter syndrome where you walk away from it and you're like, did I just fool someone into thinking that I'm autistic? Mm-hmm. I did have this imposter syndrome. If I'm being completely honest, there are still days where I'm like, is that really what this is? And then something will happen that will, I'm like, no, it's for sure autism.
Give me a list of a few things when you're reading that book or things that happen in your life that you're like, okay, this makes sense. I know this diagnosis does fit with me.
I would say probably one of the biggest things is this collective experience of feeling like you're an alien. It's hard to explain other than what it sounds like. When you're autistic, there just is this feeling. You're looking around at people. You want to connect with people. You want to have these experiences that everyone else is having. But there's this bridge that you just can't quite get over. And you feel lonely. There's just this pervasive loneliness, which again, the best way to describe it is you feel like you're an alien that came here, you're inhabiting a human body, and you're trying to have this human experience, but you're just mucking it up all the time. And everything you do reinforces that you're doing it wrong. And so a lot of us eventually sort of retreat back or burn out at a certain age because we've been trying so hard to human for so many years that you just hit a point, you're like, I just don't have the energy to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's what we call the autistic burnout. And that happened for me, I think, a couple of years ago. And so the choice at that point is to stay in a state of burnout or learn how to unmask, which basically just means you stop trying so hard to be like everybody else and just accept that there are things that are different.
And those moments when you're trying to unmask, is it met with a lot of, oh, people are still here. People are sticking around and I feel more like myself, and the big scary, if I'm myself, no one's going to be here. Did you feel some of that?
I think that it's both, unfortunately. I'd love to say that once you start unmasking, everyone just throws you a parade. But this is not how it happens. I think what happens though is you really find your people. So you may think that you have 100 friends, and especially in the theater community is big and small all at the same time. And you think that you have all these friends and you realize they're really more just theater acquaintances, right? When you do shows together, you're besties. And then once the show ends, you stop talking to each other. Mm-hmm. But when you start unmasking, you find that there are people who don't want to be around you anymore because there's a lot of people pleasing that goes along. And I think that even holistic people can appreciate this, right? As you grow up and you're like, you know what? I just don't have the time to make everyone else happy.
Yeah, a lot of these themes definitely transcend autism. Yes. Because there's a terminology called obliger rebellion, where if you're always an obliger and you're always people pleasing, you hit this wall where you're like, I cannot anymore. I'm done. Yeah. And then you almost retreat. And anytime someone's asking you for something, you're just like, no, it's a rebellion almost.
Don't you feel like that is Mormon coded just a little bit though?
Totally.
I'm like, what's the perfect place to hide an autistic person? In the Mormon church. No, I'm serious.
So let's go back to that.
Yeah.
No, I want to go back to like your upbringing with the autism too. We can sprinkle that in. But
yeah.
Were you raised in a super conservative household?
Yeah.
Like very LDS. I know you said your childhood was a little traumatic, sensing some dark humor, but we can get deep if you want. But overall, how was your childhood?
Again, my autism tells me to just be very honest, which is my childhood was traumatic. For a number of reasons. One, because of the undiagnosed autism. Two, because I've never actually spoken publicly about my childhood because, I don't know, I always told myself that I would talk about it once my parents were dead, just out of respect for them, even though they may not deserve that respect. I don't know if that's the Mormon in me too. It's that appearance of, we got to keep up the appearance, right? And so I want to just say, oh, no, it was fine, but it wasn't. And there was definitely one parent that was the problem. And I've since cut that parent out of my life. It was my dad. So it was hard because not only was I dealing with a malignant narcissist parent who also potentially was a sociopath. That's my opinion. But, allegedly. For entertainment purposes only. Allegedly. Mm-hmm. There was also that perfectionist, and that is hard for an autistic person. I can give you one example. So in the LDS church, It is very much taught that our purpose here is to come down, get bodies, get married, have babies, because we're supposed to be bringing these spirit children so that they can come down and have these experiences. But here's the thing. I've never wanted children. Never. And when I say never, I mean never. I wasn't playing with baby dolls when I was a kid. And even as I got older, I hated babysitting. Anytime neighbors would be like, does Britty want to come earn some extra money? I would go over there for 10 minutes, have a straight up panic attack, and call my mom to come get me. And people made me feel like trash growing up. Or they would say things like, oh, you just wait till you get older. I'm like, okay, when is older? Because I'm in my teens and I don't want children. I'm in my 20s and I still don't want them. Hey, look, I hit my 30s and I still don't want them. Oh, well, your biological clock. I'm like, no, that egg timer is almost
Gone, and
to
that's
the
a
end.
relief.
You're like,
Yeah,
thank
I'm like,
goodness.
I am counting the days till I'm infertile. Like, happy days. Like, the menopausal stuff is garbage. But like the not having children part,
Great. People start pressuring you. Amazing.
right. But that was just one example of fit in the box, fit in the box, fit in the box.
So in church, were you just like, I'm not subscribing to this. This does not resonate with me.
I was such a good Mormon because autistic people are rule followers. Give us rules. That's one of the things that we hate about life, is that there seem to be no rules, especially no social rules. Why does this person get away with being a dick? Sorry, I like that word. And that person doesn't. Why does this person get to talk back to their boss, but when I talk back to the boss, I get fired? There should be rules,
Yeah.
and we should be able to follow these rules, and there shouldn't be nuance in,
They should
any of this.
apply to everyone.
Yes,
Yeah.
give me rules. And so the Mormon church was incredibly soothing to the autistic soul because there were clear rules. We don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't do any of that stuff. We're not doing the sex until we get married. And then you're having all the sex, which is so weird. You're just like, ignore your body entirely. Don't explore it. But the second you get married, go, 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 you know, and you're just like, oh, and also you only exist for the pleasure of your husband.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like your pleasure. No, I really hope the church has come along in that way. I don't know if it has, but
Let's hope so.
I really hope it does. But these rules were so soothing, and I was a rule follower. I remember the first time I went in and talked to my bishop was because a boy literally kissed my neck. Now, keep in mind, I'm in my 20s. I'm in my 20s because emotionally autistic people develop a little slower than their peers. And so I was a very naive. I was experiencing things in my 20s that I reasonably should have experienced in my teens, and so forth and so on. But I went in and I was like, Bishop, I necked.
He kissed right here.
Yeah, because in the For Strength of Youth pamphlet, it says necking, which I literally interpreted with my autistic brain to mean that if he kissed my neck, we were necking. And that I was so prepared. I'm like, here's my temple recommend. Here's my membership.
Yeah.
Just rip it up in front of me. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to hell. And he laughed at me.
Oh, he's just like, oh, Britty.
Yeah, he was like, you poor sweet thing. I had a bishop ask me once, actually more traumatic. That's more funny, I guess. But then I had a bishop ask me once because I went in and I was like, yeah, I was kind of fooling around with my boyfriend at the time, and he starts asking all the questions, which are just so inappropriate
Yeah,
for someone who's
it's-
not a psychologist to be asking,
Yep.
not a trained health professional. But I digest. He's just like, where was he touching you? Where were you touching him? Were your clothes on? Were they off? And I'm just like, yeah, so no, none of that. And by the way, I hate all of the euphemisms for dry humping. I hate them all.
Yep.
They're all gross.
Just derfing.
No.
She's like, don't tell me.
That's one. Derfing. Grinding.
What is it? I like sparking.
Oh, I've never heard sparking.
Because if you think about like back when everyone wore jeans, like the button on your jeans and the button on his
you're
jeans, like
doing
tink, tink, lint and steel.
My bishop used to call it Levi Lovin'.
No, I hate that one.
That's the worst.
almost-
I know. I'm like, Levi Lovin'.
Levi loving, humping, dry humping. They're all gross.
Soaking, docking, all the things.
Okay, no, that's a whole
That's
nother
something
level.
else. But
Yeah.
it's got to go into the slang.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I feel like our terminology was grinding.
Was it?
That's what it
Like,
was.
oh, he grinded on
Who doesn't
you.
enjoy it? Like
A little
kind
grind.
of fun,
Yeah.
actually. Even after you're married, you're like, yeah, do you want to just
Grind.
grind a little bit? And the guys are like, no, why? Like,
literally why?
Like, why would I do that? You're just like,
Okay.
no reason.
Just wondering.
But yeah, I told him that we had been doing that. And I'm not even kidding you. He straight up asked me, he was like, did you orgasm?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I am at this
That-
point.
That adds 30 days to your sentence if you orgasmed.
I mean, if you're going to do it right.
Yeah.
But I think I was 26 at the time. So this will
Okay.
just kind of illustrate my point. He's like, did you orgasm? And I was like, what's that?
Oh, no.
No, did he tell you?
No. He laughed at me again. He laughed.
Did he think you were joking?
And he said, well, if you don't know what it is, then obviously it didn't happen. You would know if it happened. I'm like,
oh,
like, I just-
no.
it's so creepy.
bad.
And here's the thing. I understand the good intention behind it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like the lay clergy. Great. But can we please stop having men in their 40s and 50s who have no training?
Like talking to these
no
teenage
training.
girls.
No, I'm telling you,
In private.
when I got into therapy, really got into therapy for the first time, found a real good and competent therapist, I was so trained by the LDS church to just spill everything. So I'm sitting there in his office day one. So then this traumatic thing happened to me and this traumatic thing. And and he's just like, whoa. He's like, you're unpacking a lot of really heavy stuff. He's like, let's not just throw it out there. Let's treat it with the respect that it deserves. Let's unpack this shit.
Yeah,
Wait,
like
I love
slowly
that.
and, like,
Slowly.
work through it.
But we're so conditioned, I think, in the church
To like
to
get
just
it off your chest and
Yes.
repent and get it all out there. It's so
Yeah.
coded in your DNA at this point.
It
where
is.
it's every single interaction and thing you do is doused in that.
And here's the thing, I'll say this up front. Even though I left the church over a decade ago at this point, I would not consider myself anti-Mormon because I personally believe that I don't get to say what is best for somebody. Because I've met people who, if the church was taken away from them, they would collapse in on themselves like a dying star. They need that. They need it to have hope. People think that when you leave because you want to go sin. Like, I did not want to leave. It's just that because of my autism, I have to be intellectually honest. So if something is true, then I'm going to give it 1,000%. And if it's not true, I have to step away from it. And once I realized in my own head, and this is just for me, that it wasn't true the way that I thought it was.
That moment, like your shelf breaking, as they would say.
That's a longer story, but essentially I was getting ready to go through the temple on my own because I wasn't married. And I just was like, it's time to level up, right? That Pokemon needs to evolve. And so just like, I'm going to go through the temple on my own. I don't need a man. Because I wanted to go on a mission, but my bishop told me I was too pretty to go on a mission.
Yeah, girl.
You're too pretty. You're gorgeous. You cannot tempt those boys.
It was a different
those
time.
elders.
Yeah.
Seriously, no, this is before, because now I guess they're encouraging girls to go. I was like, where was that when I was that
He's like, oh,
age?
sweetie, you're too pretty. You should stay
no.
back and get married.
No, he literally told me that there are two kinds of girls in the world.
Sister missionaries and then pretty people.
Yeah.
This was back when missionaries went on missions at 21.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was too pretty. I needed to stay home and get married. So then when I tried to go through the temple on my own, I started taking temple prep classes. And that just opened the door because I realized I'd never had my Joseph Smith moment that everyone talks about. I'd always just believed it was true. And I'd had a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings, right? Looking back, there was also a lot of stuff that made me go like, but I was like, I'm going to have my Joseph Smith moment. This is what people don't believe me, but I set out to prove it was true. And in the course of that, I accidentally proved that it wasn't.
And what did that look like?
Hypothesis failed.
That looked like me curled up in the corner rocking back and forth, sobbing over the fact that everyone I loved was now just gone forever. And that this fairy tale that had been built for me was just ripped out of my hands. And I lost a good 5 years of my life that I don't even remember. When I look back, I have very few memories of about 3 to 5 years. And that includes when I got my autism diagnosis.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
To unpack, like leaving the church, getting diagnosed. It's probably
deconstructing every single thing you know about
was crazy.
life and yourself.
Yeah, it was wild. It was a series of small events. It was basically, I found enough evidence to convince me beyond a reasonable doubt. The way my brain works is like a courtroom. One side will present evidence, the other side will present a counter argument, and then they'll go to battle against each other. And then when I feel like one side has met their burden of proof, then that's what we'll go with. My mind can always be changed. I try not to land too hard on things because I truly believe at the end of the day, none of us know anything as a general rule. And every time we think we know something, 10 minutes later, we know something different. And so I think it's silly a little bit to be like, I know for sure that this is how it is. I'm like, we don't even know how the universe started. We don't even know if we went to the moon.
I know Sammy and I were having this conversation actually the other day, and I was like, all I know is I don't know. And that feels so comforting to me. And she was like, how is that comforting?
Right? You're two sides of the, of like,
opposite.
You start there with how is that comforting? And then eventually you get there. So you're like, because it means that anything is possible.
Yeah, that's where it is, where I'm so fluid in my thoughts. And so nothing has to be cemented. And that is undoing a little bit of my upbringing.
But that applies to everything. Again, that applies to politics. I don't get fussed over politics. People are like, oh, are you left? Are you right? Are you conservative? And people try and guess that all the time on the TikTok. People try and drag me into political debates because I'll post something. I posted something about the RFK thing in autism because I thought that he was being dumb. I really did. I thought he was being uneducated and he was spreading ignorant information about autism. So people are like, yes, she's definitely on the left. And then the next day I'll post something else that slams the left. And they're like, well, where are you? I'm like, I'm nowhere, bitches.
You're like, try and catch me.
Yeah, exactly. Because I like that. I don't like boxes.
But people like boxes.
Yes.
People want to know.
Yes.
Like,
yeah,
what?
we talked about this too, where people get mad when you're not in a box.
Yes.
They're like, choose a side.
Because
you
their
traitor.
brains can't handle the nuance. Because they're just like, it has to be this because I have to know what to do with you. And so if you're this and this and this, I want to hate you, but I can't unless
I hate you because like you can't decide.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, why don't you just try and practicize? New word. Practice and exercise.
Love it.
Practicize, live and let live. And let everyone walk their own path. You don't have to follow them down that path. You get to walk your own path. And unless it directly impacts your life and you got to set a boundary with that person, why do you care? Why do you care? And that's all the internet is. And that's partly why social media is so hard and TikTok is so hard because granted, a lot of those trolls are bots.
I know. Are you ever tempted to start a freaking fight in the comment section?
I definitely have gone fisticuffs in the comments section before. When I realized that you don't even know if they're real people, companies will develop these AI accounts that are very rage bait. They're very divisive. You have to be on one side or the other. There's no middle ground here. And the reason is because if you're part of the TikTok Creator Fund, then you make money off of your views. What's the best way to get people to engage on your platform if you make them angry? I've tested this before where I've gone on and made rage bait or I've purposely mispronounced a certain word. People get in the comment, you said this wrong. And I'm like, yeah, and you just engaged my video.
Comment.
Or the other day, I was like, what is this movie quote from? But I made sure that it was over a minute long because the algorithm won't pay you out unless your video is over a minute long. It's just one of those stupid TikTok rules. And so I was like, well, I got to stretch this thing out. And so I was like, what is this quote? I don't even know. I think it was like, and like, I just did it. And then at the last 5 seconds, I'm like, and here's the quote. Can I tell you how many people? That video is at like 400,000 views right now. 90% of those comments are get to the point. Like, is the quote in the room with us? Like all, and I'm just like, why couldn't you just spit it out? I'm like, because you just engaged in my video.
So on your TikTok, the best thing that we ever discovered was you talking about this fever dream of the Mayan restaurant. So for those who aren't in Utah, describe what the Mayan restaurant was.
It was a fever dream. So the Mayan restaurant opened in 1999. It was a 3-story, it felt more like a 5-story, but I think technically it was a 3-story restaurant that was sort of like a rainforest cafe meets Casa Bonitas. A lot of people will compare it to Casa Bonitas in Denver. And actually, Casa Bonita sued the Mayan in 2000 because of the intellectual property. They're like, you ripped off our concept to Larry H. Miller, who had built the Mayan, right? Larry is no longer with us. I think he died in like 2009.
Rip.
But this was his brainchild. I mean, the Larry H. Miller group is still very much alive and well. If you're from Utah, you know there's like the Larry H. Miller dealerships. They used to own the Jazz, and they own all of the megaplexes still. Megaplex theaters. But the Mayan, there was a waterfall, there was cliff divers. They served Mexican food, which went through like 100 different iterations. It opened in 1999 and it closed in 2011. So it was only open for a handful of years. And for a lot of people, especially people who are a little bit younger than I am, that was core childhood memory.
Totally.
But then it was gone.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
basically us 'cause we graduated high
Yeah.
school in 2011.
Yeah.
So it was like I'd
Childhood.
go every single year for my birthday, and then all of a sudden it just went away.
And so people have this conversation online where they're like, did it even actually exist? Like, did I dream this? Did I make this up? Or like the Mayan-Dela effect, right? Where everyone remembers something collectively, but then it's like, well, that's not really
Well,
how
and the
it
different
was.
iterations, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, the talking parrots. Did they actually talk, or you actually do this on your birthday, or the different
Yeah.
traditions and things?
Yeah. So for me, that was my first real job when I was in high school, was working at the Mayan.
So how did that start? Did you just be like, oh, I want to work there. I'm going to go apply for a hostess position or something?
I think I had a friend that was already working as an entertainer.
Okay.
And she was like, they're looking for more entertainers. And that was the first iteration. So that was back when the birds talked. So I did that. You can go and sit in a chair like this, right? It was more like an office chair. And it would have joysticks on the side and stuff. And then you'd have this panel of screens, and you'd have a headset with like a microphone on top of it or coming out to your side. And then you could see, it was black and white. The screens weren't very good, but really you could hear what the tables were saying. And so you could jump from bird to bird. And each bird had to have a different voice, a different
Oh my gosh,
character.
This is so classic.
Yeah.
So was that a fun, creative
Oh my
job
gosh.
for you to do?
I was so spoiled. Who gets that as their first job?
And also, is that not illegal to be like eavesdropping on everyone's conversations?
I hate to tell you this, we're literally being recorded all the time.
Your
There's no
phones are
privacy.
listening.
There's literally no privacy. I mean, the kids loved it. The worst part was definitely the mascot, because this is back when there were mascots. Do you guys remember that at all?
No, tell us.
So there were 2 mascots. There was a toucan bird and a jaguar. The toucan was a little bit better because it had this giant belly, and so children couldn't like anaconda wrap you the way that they could when you were in the jaguar. They could just be like, because children are the worst. And those costumes stank, because you have to realize the Mayan had a giant waterfall, which means it was always humid in there, which, by the way, again, another perfect place for an autistic person. Dark, mood, right? Gentle, therapeutic sounds of water all day long. Like, I dream about the Mayan. I have a recurring dream, and lots of other people do. They have this recurring dream that the Mayan opens back up again. But no, the worst part absolutely was those stupid effing mascot costumes. But there were times where, yeah, for your birthday, they would have the dancers that would come out with fans and stuff. And at first, servers had to too, to the song of Hot, Hot, Hot. Like, we're so on fire. We're at the Maya feeling hot, 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 right? And some people had ribbons and some people had fans. The cliff divers were always there. They went through different iterations. At some points, they were just guys in Speedos. There wasn't much production value. It was just, okay, go dive, right? But like, do you need more than that?
Yeah,
I don't
we'll
know.
take it.
And then we get into like the cultural appropriation era, where it's like a bunch of white kids painting themselves with tribal symbols and bronzing their skin to look like Mayans. And can I tell you, I really thought that this was going to be a non-controversial thing to be like, yeah, cultural appropriation. Can we just call it what it is? People were like, ugh. And I couldn't understand why people were like, it was fine. Why are you da 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 da? And I think I figured it out. It's because a lot of people Again, Utah. A lot of people saw them as Nephites. And because Nephites were from Jerusalem, right? And there's this whole thing of them having white skin and stuff like that. I think that people were just like, oh no, that's perfectly reasonable that these Native Americans would have white. And the whole thing just makes me so uncomfortable.
You're
I'm
just
just
like, no, go to school, go to school.
I'm just
go
like,
to school.
I don't even like talking about it because it's so hot button. I feel like it's not controversial to say that maybe white kids shouldn't have been painting their skin brown. I don't know though, right? And
No, I feel like you're good in saying that.
but
and especially the age we live in now. Maybe back in 1999, it wasn't as
maybe. And the thing is, I've had people say because the Mayan civilization was wiped out and there aren't descendants of the Mayan civilization, then that's what makes it okay. I'm just like, people are going to justify however they
So
want.
much.
All I know is that I was referred to as the albino Mayan because I refused to do that.
Yeah, you're like, this feels weird and wrong, and I'm not.
Well,
gonna
not
do
only
it.
that, but I'm just so pale. There just was no helping it. I remember I got one spray tan. I looked like an Oompa Loompa. And I'm like, this is dumb. I'm not doing this. So whenever I worked as a cliff diver, and
You did diving too? Cannonballs?
let's be generous. Cliff faller.
So when you say you worked in entertainment there, you switched jobs throughout different times, right?
Again,
Where
all
you-
the different iterations.
Okay, yeah.
So there were tour guides that would dress up in jungle gear and go and give tours. My favorite, probably, again, the cultural appropriation, but I've already made that caveat. So can we move past it? So let's just talk about it. It is what it is. Was the Mayan princess, which the costume was so cool. It was made of leather. It was this cool sort of loincloth and then this giant headpiece that had this pompadour of feathers and stuff. And there was a time when the dive shows would come on, there'd be like this voiceover of Tikal, which was the goddess of the Mayan, whatever. And so you get up and kind of lip sync to the words. And then you'd make the divers dive. And it was all just very Disney. And as a theater kid, I was living my best life.
Yeah, you're like, I am princess.
That one was really cool. And then I worked as a server. I was a food runner. And when you're running up 6 flights of stairs, every time someone needs food, you get in really great shape. So it was crazy. And there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff too with the divers and the debauchery that went on backstage.
Do you feel like it would have been a good television show?
Yes. Yes. Like
A good reality show.
if reality TV had been a thing back then,
Can you imagine?
oh my gosh. And we would have called it Behind the Waterfall because literally the dive room was behind the waterfall. Like the cliff face, if you were go behind it, that was the dive room. And that's where we would hang out. And then it was a series of tunnels to get to the top of the waterfall, which was, I want to say like 25 feet or something like that. But yeah, and there were a couple of showers back there. It was pretty small, but that's where we would hang out between shows, which, by the way, not glamorous because even though the water wasn't cold, they did warm the water. Once you got out of it, you were freezing because you're wet. And so your choices are sit there in your wetness and wait for the next show, which is what most of us did, right? Get a towel, but then that towel is wet.
How often was it? Like every 30 minutes on the
Yeah.
dot or something?
It was every 30 minutes or so. Towards the end, it was like there'd be a dive show and then there would just be like a rain show, which there'd be no divers, but the restaurant would just cycle through like a rainstorm and the waterfall would push out harder than it normally does. And that would give time to kind of relax. And then you'd do another dive show and whatnot. There were divers who people were definitely like dating and hooking up. And
Really?
there was definitely nudity.
No. Were people getting in this tiny shower together?
They go and get those big plastic horse troughs and we make our own hot tub that you could go sit in between shows. And a lot of this was after hours and we'd have like, after hours parties after the restaurant would close for the night. Then it was just like, woo! And
No, and you guys would just party.
We had this
Yeah.
whole place to ourselves.
Yeah, it was wild. And I went to a couple of them, not as many as I should have, but there's a couple of marriages that came out of the Mayan. Most famously, so Mary and Tice, their group is called Duo Transcend. They were on 2 seasons of America's Got Talent.
Okay.
They do a trapeze act. So if people watch that show, they'll probably be familiar with Mary and Tice. They met at the Mayan. And they're both just insane human beings. They don't have that thing in your brain that tells you not to do something because you'll die.
How do they hire these divers? Are they trained professionals that know how to dive? Or are some of you guys like, sure, let me practice at the rec center and I'll be back.
And then there's me. It's like,
position.
I think that on the application, it just says, do you have a disregard for bodily autonomy? And I'm like, check. Okay, so some divers, most of them, they dove in high school. Some of them dove collegiately. Some of them were just sort of amateur. Like Mary had never really dove professionally. And I don't think Tice had either. Tice and his brother Lance both worked there. They were just daredevils. I'm telling you, some people are just, you say like, hey, you think you could climb up to the rafters and dangle from your feet and fall into the pool, which they did. So you think top rock is like 20 to 30 feet. The rafters were another 15 feet up.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't realize the pool was tiny.
It's so small. You have to land it or else.
Right. So the issue is if you jump too far, you die. Mm-hmm. Truly, you'll die. You'll smack on the floor in front of the tables and traumatize children. Or you'll hit rocks. If you don't jump far enough, you'll clip the cliff on your way down and you'll die. So precision is key. Not only that, but the pool was not deep enough because in regulation diving, the pool has to be deep enough to accommodate how high you're jumping from because of velocity, right? Yeah. If you smack the water, it has to be deep enough that if you were to go head first, you're not going to hit your head on the bottom of the pool. Well, the Mayan wasn't deep enough. The pool wasn't deep enough. So that's why a lot of divers would hit feet first because it was actually quite dangerous to go head first because you could potentially, if you're going fast enough, break your neck.
Did they ever have any accidents while you were working there?
All the time.
People getting injured? Anything crazy?
Yeah. The worst one I remember is a guy named Chris broke his back. He was just doing a normal dive. And you can always tell when something was really wrong because all the mood lighting in the restaurant would all of a sudden go away. So you'd have real lights because it was very dark in there. So the house lights would come on, the music would stop, and the waterfall would stop. That's how you know that something is wrong. I can't remember what I was doing at the time, but I was somewhere in the restaurant and all of a sudden, and like right after a dive show, so you kind of put two and two together. And yeah, he hit the water wrong. He over-rotated, under-rotated, who knows. And thank God, literally, that another diver was behind him because the way that the waterfall worked, underneath is how you get back into the dive room. So there's no way of really getting out of the pool unless you swim underneath, which is terrifying because it basically means there's this little opening here. And if you miss it, you're just going to smack your head on rock, solid rock. You've got this tiny margin of error. And that was always when you were learning the scariest thing because you're trying to reach up underneath to find the hole. Because if you go underneath and you're just like smacking, you could drown. And so if you're the last diver, right, and everyone else has already swam under, you're in the pool by yourself and no one's spotting you per se. So fortunately for Chris, he wasn't the last diver, and the diver who was going after him saw him hit the water and saw that he didn't come up, which again is not uncommon because some divers will go straight underneath. But he sat there for a second. He realized something was wrong. I think Chris finally surfaced and he dove in and pulled him out. And then the ambulance came and took him away. But that was the worst I ever saw. Truly, more what it was is we were, all of us, constantly bloody because the ladders to climb the Mayan were rough because they have to be because they're wet. So they made them rough and jagged so that you can't slip off of them. So if you bang your shin against that ladder rung, it's like sandpaper times infinity. So just cut, bruise, cut, concussions, lots of concussions, slipping, hitting heads on rocks. It was good times.
So why did the Mayan go out of business?
It's a great question. Well, I can say this. The way they went about it was fairly uncool. There was no warning.
Because were you working up until it closed?
I think that I had just taken a break, because I took lots of breaks because I went to school or whatever it was. I think I was not employed at the time. I must not have been because I don't remember getting fired. But all my friends were still there.
What was the pay scale?
Garbage.
So you're making nothing and risking your life every 30 minutes.
Yes. 100%.
Minimum wage or
$10 an hour?
Would the entertainment get in on the tips or anything that the servers would make?
No.
Oh,
$10 an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is insane.
It was pretty wild. So yeah, I just remember one night I got like a phone call from Mary probably, and she was just like, Britty, they're saying that they're closing us down. And I was like, what? So no warning. That restaurant, because it was so big, employed over 150 employees.
Wow.
That were immediately
fired.
So it wasn't like we're closing next week.
Nope. It wasn't like, hey, there's a month, start looking for another job. Now, the company will claim that they offered to relocate people to the megaplex theaters, but how many jobs could there possibly be? And when you go from waiting tables and making X amount of dollars, you really think that they're going to go, usher?
Yeah.
Pop popcorn for minimum wage? It's just not reasonable. And there were people who had been there since the beginning. I remember this lady, Mama Donna. I don't know if she's still out there, but Mama Donna was everyone's mama. When that happened, she was still just trying to take care of everyone else. And it was so messed up. And they say it was because of financial reasons. The going theory is that the Mayan was never profitable.
That makes sense.
Well, it's like restaurants in general aren't that profitable. Then
Right.
you add on that it's trying to be like a
Right.
theme park. Yeah.
But there was also this idea that because it wasn't profitable, they could use it as a write-off for the whole complex. I don't know if that's true. That was completely rumor. But I can also say that the Mayan was the brainchild and the pet project of Larry H. Miller. He loved that place. And so over the years, they tried to shut it down on several occasions. But Larry would always come back and say, no, I love the Mayan. And we loved it too, right? And Larry is a very controversial figure. Some people love him. Some people see him as this ruthless, heartless businessman. He was complex.
Did you guys interact with him ever?
He would come in. Yeah. He would come in and get dinner. The joke with him was always that he never tipped, which is funny. But like, I guess he just thought since it's his restaurant and he's employing everyone, he's like, I already gave you a job and now you want to tip on top of it kind of thing. I'm like,
yes.
I guess there's some logic there. But I will say his grandkids, they always tipped very well. But they would come in with these cards. They were Jordan Commons credit cards. So basically they were just debit cards that had unlimited amounts of money on them. And so they would spend a couple $100 on a meal and then they would leave you 20, $30 on top of it. They were always very, very generous. And then I also worked at Spaghetti Mama's, which a lot of people don't remember. That was across the street from the Mayan.
Was it by Joe's Crab Shack? Okay.
It was right next door to Joe's Crab Shack. And the Miller group, so the guys who sit on the board, would come into Spaghetti Mama's a lot. And they would sit there, and that was interesting because they would have conversations about the Jazz. They would talk about like who they're going to trade and stuff like that. If I'd had a TikTok back then, I would have been like, so listen, I can't tell you how I know this, but Karl Malone's about to retire. Allegedly. But everyone was always nice. That's the thing. I wouldn't say anyone was rude or abusive.
Was the quality slowly going down through the years up until the very end? Were you wearing those leather headdresses?
Headdresses really started to stink towards the end. Definitely. There came a time. Well, again, there were so many times throughout those years that we thought, oh, this is it. There were so many like, this is it. This is it. This is over. We're not going to see the light of day. And then another iteration would happen. And then there were times where the food sucks. And then there were times where we brought in Dorian Kidd, who allegedly was one of the founding brainchild chefs behind Cafe Rio. He was one of the concept chefs, presumably. And so they brought him in and he revamped the menu and it was delicious. But the cost was too high because the food quality was too high. And they're like, well, we're not going to pay for this. So they went back to like crappy frozen enchiladas. So again, the Mayan-Dela effect, you'll have people say, I remember the food being pretty good. And other people be like, are you joking?
Yeah.
Like it was garbage. But that's not why you went. You went for the divers.
I know. Was there a cost to get in or was it just your dinner?
To my knowledge, there was never a cost to get in. Casa Bonita's does that.
Is it still open?
Casa Bonita's? Yes, because the guys from South Park bought it.
Really?
And they renovated. Well, yeah, because in South Park, Cartman is obsessed with Casa Bonitas. Casa Bonita. And so,
bought it.
yeah. And they knew because Casa Bonita started to go under the way that the Mayan was going under. And those guys are just brilliant in 101 ways. And they're like, wait a sec. So they went in, it shut down for like a year. They revamped it. And now I looked the other day because I want to go. If you want a table where you can see divers, you literally can't get one. It's booked out until October. If you want to just sit in like the crap area where you can't see anything, you still have to pay. I want to say it's like $45 a person
to get in, and then
well, that includes the food.
Okay,
but that's still $45 a person.
Yeah. See, but I'm trying to take a road trip. I didn't even know about this place.
Yeah,
I know because I missed
it's in Denver.
If it can even just scratch that itch. Of
Yes,
the Mayan,
this
then
is
I'm
my
down.
point. I want the smell. It's like going to Disneyland.
Chlorine, like
yes.
you walk in and it hits you, and it's a little musty.
Yes, it's that Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
It hits different.
So let's say you win the lottery tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is opening a Mayan
Yes.
restaurant on your list? Yes.
Billion
I
percent.
love it. No hesitancy.
Yeah, no.
Same.
If I could find angel investors to open it, because I honestly feel like now is the time. And maybe not, because depending on how the world goes, we could be heading into another recession. We'll see. So maybe this is the absolute worst time to do it. But so long as things stay kind of okay,
We need joy in our lives.
our generation, right? The generation that grew up as kids now have the money. They will go.
They'll do it for the nostalgia factor.
They will. And
taking your kids, kids would be obsessed.
Right?
What do you feel like you would do differently for it to succeed in today's world? Let's map out your game plan here.
so I wouldn't do too many things horribly different, but the food obviously would matter, because I don't feel like you can get away with crap food. But the thing is, I'm sorry, have you been to any Mexican restaurant in Utah outside of the Red Iguana? It's all just kind of mid.
Yeah.
I know people are going to come at me for that. It's fine. I understand there's hole-in-the-wall places that are delicious. But I'm just saying, go to any generic Mexican restaurant, and it's all kind of the same, right? So do I think it needs to be gourmet? No, but it could. It could be elevated to where it's like, no, we actually give a crap. Like, the food comes first. I don't think that I would make it as big necessarily, because part of the problem was because of how big it was, it required multiple kitchens. So there was a kitchen on the first floor, there was a kitchen on the second floor, and just the cost of operation was gigantic. However, if you have someone from like Disney come in and Imaginarium the whole thing, then it could be that grand again. And it kind of needs to be to scale, because waterfall. And then none of the cultural appropriation. We wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Do away with that.
They would just be divers.
Yeah.
What is it now, the Mayan? Did they demolish it?
So if you go to Jordan Commons, so there's the movie theater, and then there's a place where they hold corporate events. They gutted the interior and turned it into basically corporate space. So yeah, if your business wants to have a luncheon there or something. However, one artifact remains, which is in the dive room, we had a mural. And when I say mural, I just mean one of the walls had a painting of a diver on it. You can go onto my TikTok. I'm pretty sure that's one of the photos that I have on there. And it was signed, I think, by some of the divers. And that still exists. They didn't paint over that. So
it was real. The Mayan was real, guys.
Yeah, there's one. That's the one kind of artifact that remains.
Did anyone take anything?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah.
1,000%.
My basement's full of artifacts.
Yeah, no, I've talked to other divers. Oh yeah, I totally took stuff. But yeah, and you have to understand, people were mad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So were people grabbing shit on the way out? Yeah, they were.
So you never even got to have one last meal.
One last
supper.
One last
Frozen.
jump. I think we did have a party that night. I think that was our last after hours. We're like, well, if we're going out, because yeah, I think that's how it happened. Because they had all this food. You have to understand, they had food. They were planning on being open. So there was at least a week's worth of food, if not more. So the chefs and the cooks were just like, okay. So they just made it all. So there were just pans and pans and trays of food. And everyone just sort of gathered and ate and cried. And
because it's this weird experience where it's like high school. You've been together for so long. Do you keep in touch with anyone that you used to work with?
yeah, mostly the entertainment. So everyone had a Mayan name.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Some people had Mayan names. And some people just had funny names. So we had Guppy and Pup and stuff like that. So Guppy, I still talk to. That's one of the Marys. And actually, so Lance, who was one of the divers, him and his wife actually are just finishing doing Finding Neverland at Hale Center Theater as the aerialists.
Oh my gosh, it's so
Wow.
legit. They
Yeah.
went on. They leveled up. Hopefully
Yeah.
they're making more than $10 an hour.
Yeah, they are. I can say that with reasonable certainty. And then we had a couple guys go work with Cirque du Soleil. One of the guys named Andy worked in O, which is the water show. So he was diving from even higher up.
Wow.
And some people, it really was just they were stay-at-home moms and dads, and this was their way of getting out and doing something fun. And once it closed, it was like, okay, I guess I'm just not going to do this anymore. Everyone kind of went their own way. But yeah, some of my most wild memories involve people from the Mayan. It's like they're just built different
Totally.
So
How many
fun.
years in total did you work there?
from the time it opened till the time it closed.
Oh my gosh. You were
Off
there
and
the
on.
whole time.
It's like 11, 12 years.
That was over a decade of my life
Wow.
working there. And I dated people from that. I had my own romances, and people were like, was it magical? I'm like, it was. There was
Yeah.
also a lot of bullshit, but
And obviously,
Overall.
rose-colored glasses looking back,
Yeah.
that goes away, and you just remember the people and the feeling. And
you remember the good times and some of the crazy times. But again, like you were saying, it absolutely would have made an amazing
Reality show.
reality TV show. And I know because I've been approached twice for different reality TV shows. And
Really? Like what kind?
okay, one was years ago. It was a concept that never actually made it to fruition, but I'm pretty sure it was TLC. And they were doing basically, they wanted to follow around Mormon virgins. Like, I'm not even kidding you, because they just thought it was so interesting that there could be people in their 20s and 30s who had never had sex. And that was me. So I was
necking.
How did they find you?
oh, I got referred.
Oh,
By your bishop.
this
No.
girl doesn't know what an orgasm is. She'd be great for the show.
It's my fault. Perfect. It's perfect. I'll take 12. No, at the time I had a blog. This is back when blogs were a thing.
Okay.
I had a blog called The Diary of an Anxious White Virgin.
Oh, okay.
So that was my fault.
okay.
Uh,
a little bit of a giveaway.
Yeah. People who followed my blog were like, she's a white Mormon virgin. Shall we sacrifice her? And they called. And this is when I realized that reality TV is mostly reality, but because the guy was asking me questions and he's like, this is what your character would be. I'm like, my what? And he's like, yeah, your character is X, Y, and Z. I'm like, well, that's not me at all. He's like, I know, but...
Because a lot of it is so fake.
Which is why when people were like, oh, the real lives of the Mormon house, are they really like that? I'm like,
Yeah.
kind of. And I don't know them personally, so I can't speak to it, I suppose. But
What are your thoughts on all of that? The world's fascination with Utah.
because it's a weird fucking place. Utah is a very strange place. There is nothing like a Utah. And in some ways, it's phenomenal. Like, best kept secret on the planet, right? Although people are starting to figure it out and move here, which is just so unfortunate.
No,
We
don't
could
come
just
here.
Stop that
Don't
and
come
then
here. We're
people-
full.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're full. Sold out.
We're full. Don't come here. We don't have any room for you. But the culture is so weird. And you don't know it. Like a fish doesn't know it's wet. Mormons don't know they're weird because they're just surrounded by other Mormons. So unless you get out, and by that I mean get out of the church or get out of the state, you just don't understand. And I get it. We're all blonde. All of us are blonde, right? To varying degrees.
Yeah.
We have our water bottles.
We have our Stanleys. Well, mine's a Walla, but that's still trendy apparently. I wasn't even trying.
Yeah.
but-
Don't you hate that? And then you're like, now I'm one of them.
Yeah, apparently the kids love the freaking Owalas. Like, but I understand people's fascination because it's weird. And I do think that this culture of keeping up with the Joneses, everyone looks like a Stepford wife. We have one of the highest rates of plastic surgery. Everyone has injectables. Everyone has extensions. Everyone looks the same because a lot of Mormons come from the same heritage, which is some kind of Scandinavian, European descent. And I'm sorry, but it's true. It's hilarious. Have you guys played this game where you go on to ancestry.com? It's not technically Mormon, right? But it is a genealogy
Yeah,
site
we
where you
love
can...
the genealogy.
We love our genealogy because we can all track it back to the same common ancestor. So don't do this unless you want to gross yourself out. I don't know if you guys are married, But play the game sometime where you figure out how closely related you are to your spouse. Yeah, me and mine are like 12th cousins. And that's too close because, again, we all come from England, Scotland, Scandinavian, European countries. So why are Mormons so attractive? Because we're all related. And why are they attractive? Because my friend who is a sociologist pointed this out to me, because Mormons breed for beauty. Other cultures value things like intelligence, work ethic, and there's cultures that have arranged marriages that don't really care as much about how you look. It's more about what you can provide for the family. Mormons marry and breed for beauty and for appearances and stuff like that. So no wonder everyone in Utah is attractive, because this is what we value. We value aesthetics. We do. We just do. Our state is beautiful. Our temples are beautiful. Our people are beautiful. And here's the thing. That's great if you're one of the pretty people. But if you're not, and you don't belong in this culture,
Then you
screw
go on a
you.
mission.
Then you go on a mission. Yes. That's epic callback.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like Utah is its own thing, and it can be very alienating if you're not from here. And if you're not part of the culture, it can feel very isolating. And if you're in it, it can feel very nice.
What part of Utah did you grow up in?
Sandy.
Sandy. Because I have a question. 'Cause,
Yeah.
Speaking of Utah lore, I want to know if you ever experienced the other fever dream of the Space Center. Do you know what that is?
Are you talking about the one where you go and do space simulations?
I was in an elementary school in like Pleasant Grove.
Yeah. Yes.
Did
But-
you ever experience that?
Yeah, but I'll do you one better.
Okay.
So if you go to Murray, there was a restaurant that used to be called the Wagon Wheel, and you would go and like sit in a wagon and have dinner or something. It was like you're eating on the prairie.
Like a pioneer type experience.
Of course.
Love.
That closed down, and then they built a flight simulator just like that, like a space flight simulator, and I worked there.
Amazing.
It's like the Mayan space center.
Yeah, it's all the same. So I was, again, behind the microphone. I was the voice of God, like directing these children. I'm like, the aliens have shot you across the bow. What do you
Yes.
do? And then these stupid kids are like, turn around.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you're dead now, stupid.
That was the Space Center. It was the coolest thing. Like
Yeah.
you would gear up, you're all your own computer, you have this mission, you have to make it to this
It's
other
still there.
planet. Yeah, I think it's still there. I went to so many birthday parties there and stuff where I
Yeah.
feel like it's a very specific thing to a childhood in Utah.
I never went there as a kid, but I became aware of it because once they built the one where I worked, we went there to see how they did it.
To
Got it.
copy.
Essentially,
to
yes.
get the voice correct.
Yeah, to go in and replicate. And that only lasted for a few years, and then that went out of business. And now I think it's a haunted house, but I couldn't tell you which one it is. But it
Okay.
still has a bunch of prairie shit in
Okay.
there. Just the random taxidermied something
They're just like,
staring at you.
And then they just turn it into a haunted house.
Yeah, which
yeah, that is kind of
it honestly makes sense.
Yeah, it's
So,
perfect.
yeah.
Perfect
But the
transition.
reason why I say, because I'm from Utah County
Mm-hmm.
and I'm now in Salt Lake County, and there's definitely a difference. I feel like Utah County is its own beast of concentrated culture,
Yeah.
beauty, keeping up with the Jones.
Yes. However, ... it has sort of permeated into, because I would say that when we're talking about like real wives, I can never say it, the real lives of Mormon housewives, right?
Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
Whatever.
I like yours better.
The real secret wives' lives, the orgy lives of Mormon wives. I don't. That's what people think. Like, are you all having orgies? I'm like, not all of us.
Yeah.
Just most
Only
of us.
8 out of 9 of us are.
Which again is like weird because Mormons are like, oh my gosh, that's such a. I'm like, polygamy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would never share my husband with somebody.
We still believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not
Not in this
physically.
life, though. Not in this life.
Nope, but I'm telling you what, when my grandma died, my grandpa, who was in his 90s, made sure to get married one last time before he died.
And then he had
I don't
it
even think he
sealed.
consummated the marriage, but he was just like stocking up wives for the afterlife.
Had to make it to the celestial. You know?
Punch my pass, please.
My grandma was a saint. I hope she's kicking his ass all across the universe. But like, yeah, like it has, I would say that that's more now concentrated into like Draper.
Oh, totally. I feel like Draper's always been that bougie, intense culture, but like
Not when I was growing up. It was farm.
Oh, really?
It was
Okay.
straight up
Back in
farm.
my day.
Like growing up in Sandy, Draper was farm.
Really?
No one lived there.
Okay.
And then they built a temple, and then everybody went there. And now you're right. You can't buy anything for like less than $1 million. You can get a shanty for $1 million.
Yeah, it's very expensive. And that is very rich.
Yes. What do they do? That's what I want to know. And
where do you work? Yeah. It's
yeah,
like,
what do you
actually though? These people with mansions in Alpine and things, I'm like, literally, what do you do for work and how do you afford this insane life? It's crazy.
There's a lot of people who come in from out of state. That's fair. During the pandemic, around 2020 to 2021, Utah saw its biggest influx of residents from other states. So, and I don't know, there's a lot of people from California and Texas and other places, and people can speculate why that is. But all of a sudden, the secret that we had all kept for so long, I mean, you guys probably even remember pre-pandemic, the freeways not feeling like LA. Yeah. And now the freeways feel like LA all the time. Maybe not quite as bad. A bunch of people moved here. A bunch of people took their California wealth, which means more here because it's more expensive to live there. And so they came here and built their McMansions. A lot of people have summer homes here, winter homes here. A lot of that is more like Park City, Eden, Midway. And you go up there and talk to those residents who have been there generationally, and they hate it.
Well, Midway now is becoming the place to live. Like everyone's like, oh, land in Midway. Now Midway's so expensive and it's very oversaturated now.
I love Midway. It is gorgeous. But when you talk about like Midway, Eden, Camas, Homestead, all those places that were farm, they were just farm. And then little houses now have these giant effing eyesore mansions everywhere. And you know what? No hate, like get your bag, whatever, you know, like who doesn't want a mansion, I suppose. I mean, I don't, it's too much to clean, but like,
yeah, you could have
I want to just buy an old ward house and turn it into a home, but the church never sells their properties. So it's a pipe dream. I'm not even kidding. I would turn the font into my bathtub. Yeah,
what would be your master bedroom? Relief Society room?
Yeah, maybe.
No, just the full-on cultural.
Cultural hall?
Where the pews? What's that one?
Is it there's a sacrament room?
Sacrament room?
Sacrament meeting room?
Sacrament
meeting room? Is that what it's called? I don't know.
Yeah, the cultural hall and then the something. Yeah.
Sacrament
I don't even know. But then I would start my own theater in the cultural hall, right? Because there's already a stage.
Yes.
Stuff like that. Like it's a perfect idea.
And then it's like you get the primary room, you get classroom A.
Yeah. So someone convinced the church to sell me a ward house for $5.
Yeah.
And then I'll spend the rest of my life renovating it.
Do you think that the culture is changing in Utah? It's hard to grasp the Mormon statistics with members because a lot of people have left the church but not removed their records or whatever. But do you feel like the culture is changing in Utah and there's less members and
more diversity,
I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as religion goes.
Yeah, definitely. I think the latest statistic was like the church makes up 50% of the population, but to your point, it's probably less. Because, for example, my records are still there. And now maybe they won't be if people see this, but I don't care.
Because that one bishop's like, oh, hell no.
Yeah, the one that asked me if I orgasmed was like, get her.
Here's your membership.
Which, again, is hilarious because I heard this the other day, and don't quote me, I may be wrong on this, but Lori Vallow, do you guys know the Daybell case? Okay, so Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell, I've heard that their records are still in the church. They have not been excommunicated, even though they have both been convicted of multiple murders. And yet people will go in a podcast like this or Mormon Stories and be like, I kind of disagree with the way that the first president, and they're just like, it's so funny and arbitrary who they axe and who they don't. I'm just like, your standards are weird. Again, where's the rule? Show me the metrics.
It's fine.
Where's the rubric?
Yeah. That's like where your autism is like, okay, wait, but what are the rules?
Yeah, but what are the rules?
Can I murder someone? Can I say shit?
Like
where we
can I say the prophet maybe doesn't speak directly to God? Nope, gone. Which is funny. Yes, I think we're becoming more diverse. Yes, I think that there's a lot of people who have left the church and just don't remove their records because they don't care to do it. I think a lot of families are mixed now, where it's like, so-and-so over here in my family, none of my siblings are active. but my parents still are. My mom and my stepdad still are. I assume my father is, but again, I cut him out like a cancer.
Because I remember
Yeah.
growing up, you would know like the one Catholic kid in your school,
Yeah.
or like the one
Yeah,
non-member,
the one that doesn't go to
like,
seminary.
One
yeah,
inactive.
like their parents drink coffee or whatever.
like,
but
yeah.
I hope now, obviously for my kids' sake, I don't have kids yet, but if I want to raise them in Utah, I hope they're not going to be the weird one-offs. I don't think it's that way anymore. At least I hope not.
I think to your point, I think it depends where you go. And then as the money comes in and people move into places, it's going to just change the demographic even more. Here's the thing. I know that people are hoping that people are going to stop moving here. They're not. There's too many reasons to move here between the economy, the topography.
And Silicon Slopes and jobs, the job
It's
market.
only
is,
going to
like, a
get
booming-
worse. They're building so much infrastructure here. Like you said, the tech hub is coming here. There's a lot of plans to build a lot of things. There's rumors that we're going to have a Major League Baseball team at some point. We just got a Major League Hockey team, right? The Mammoths, is that what they decided to call them?
Yeah.
I don't know. We already have Real. We just need football and baseball basically at that point, right? We still have the Jazz, although does anyone even go to Jazz games anymore? Are they still the
They're
Jazz?
not good. They're still the
they're
Jazz.
still the Jazz.
See, I'm from generation broken heart because I'm from the generation where Karl Malone and John Stockton and Jeff Hornacek made it to the playoffs a couple of times and then got completely robbed by the officials. And then I was just like, sports are stupid. I'm never watching these again.
I don't want to get emotionally invested in
No,
anymore.
because everything, it's like, just let the boys play.
Yeah.
Just let the men play. The officials get in there like, "Eh." I'm like, you ruined this.
Yeah.
Just let them go at it.
Have you been to a hockey game yet?
No. Have you?
Yes, they're fun.
Are they?
Because they can actually fight.
Yes.
And so that's the best
Oh,
part.
I
I'm like, yeah,
love
take
that.
off your helmets, punch them in the face.
Which is also, what is it about hockey and these romance novels, and what is it about Mormons and romance novels? Is because we're all just so
No
sexually
fantasy.
constipated.
No fantasy.
Yeah. Fantasy,
romance
but smut.
novels. Yeah, smut novels.
Do you guys read those?
They gotta be steamy.
I mean, yeah, I've read them all.
She's like, I could tell you everything.
So why the hockey? Like, what is it about hockey players?
Oh, something
What's
about
the
like
kink?
a burly bear.
Yeah,
a
what about
guy.
rugby? Have you seen rugby players' butts?
There
Back
are
to butt.
rugby.
Back to butts. It always comes back to butts.
There's series and things that touch on every sport, but I have friends who are super into hockey. But
I
it's
don't
funny.
know though with rugby. Something about another guy lifting the other guy up, kind of giving
By
him
his
a
shorts,
wedgie.
give no wedgie.
And I'm just like,
But then you can see the butt even better.
I know, but I'm like,
Okay, but again, this fantasy thing, like, why though?
I feel like, especially in the church, women are like, my bishop said it's okay. I can read these. It's like the poop hole loophole, you know? Like,
Okay,
it's like,
yeah, okay.
it's okay, let's soak, let's dock, let's do anything besides sex.
Is
like,
that real though? Poop hole loophole. Do you personally, not I heard from a friend that heard from a friend, do you personally know someone who has engaged in soaking?
No.
Okay,
soaking no.
right.
Docking?
It's the same thing.
No, like,
Yeah.
Is it
like
not?
soaking
It
is
is.
technically you go in and then someone's jumping
No,
on
we
the
know what
bed.
soaking is.
And the feet go up
yeah.
and they stay there. And they
then I
stay
think
there.
like docking is just like putting it in and chilling.
Yeah.
And if you don't move,
If we don't move,
So
it's not
fucking
sex.
stupid.
But that's the
Sorry.
thing. That's when I listen to other podcasts or people talk about
God doesn't see
Utah.
it. It's like, I'm sorry. Is God a T-Rex?
Mm-hmm.
Is his vision based on movement? So do you think
He's not
that if he
looking.
goes in
Uh-huh.
and he just stays there
Yeah.
and you don't move, does
Yeah.
God not see it?
Yeah.
Like,
But I
It's
definitely know
crazy.
people that have done butt stuff and they're like, we're
Really?
fine.
Really?
Totally.
look,
You're gonna
I
tell
know
me their
people that
names
have done
after.
butt stuff too, but that's because they've been married for a while and they're just trying to spice things up. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with butt stuff. It's just weird if that's how you're trying to skirt the rules.
Yeah.
Again,
A hole's
it's
a hole.
okay. With it's like girl math.
Yeah.
It's like saying, okay, if I buy a vacuum cleaner that was $600 dollars and I return it, that's like I've made $600.
Yeah.
And that's free money now that I can go out and spend at Ulta. I can spend that entire $600.
Oh, this is a
That's girl
this
math.
is a breakthrough. Mormon math.
Yes, so that's Mormon math.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, can I tell you a story? So I had a friend, okay? She's a grown ass woman. She has children. That's how grown her ass is, okay? She's been married. She's a whole ass adult.
Okay.
And I love her. She's gonna, if she hears this, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but she starts dating this guy. And I'm talking to her one night and I'm like, so have you guys had sex? Because they're in their 30s. They're probably having sex. And she was like, yeah, we have. And I'm like, great. Zero judgments here, babe. And I say what I always say to people. I'm like, as long as you both got tested and as long as you're both using protection, I don't give a shit. Just be smart, people. We know where babies come from. Be smart. She was like, well, no, we didn't use protection. I'm like, what? Okay. I'm like, oh, okay. Are you just not worried about getting pregnant? And she's like, no, I definitely could get pregnant. And I'm like, please explain. She's like, so this is the thing, right? So if he were to bring a condom, then that would imply that we were planning on having sex. But if we get together and it just happens, then we weren't planning, because in her mind, it was the intention. If she intended to have sex, that was a sin. But if they were just, fooling around for 3 hours and then eventually it just slides in, she trips and falls on it, right? Then that's fine, because she didn't intend to. I'm like, the Mormon acrobatics, the mind acrobatics that you have to go through, instead of, why don't we just teach sex education?
Yes.
Why don't we just say sex is a healthy, normal impulse? You're going to want to have sex with someone if you find them attractive, and especially if you love them. And that's okay. That is totally fine. And do you have to wait till you get married? That's up to you. There's reasons to do it. There's reasons not to do it. But in any case, let's be safe and smart about how we go about this.
Yes.
Right? And this dichotomy of bad, 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 bad. You're married. Go. Is not good for anyone.
Yep.
The shame is not good for anyone. There is a way to practically teach these things to our kids that don't involve shame, that don't involve you're going to hell if you touch yourself, which some people totally got that growing up. And some people were like, oh, I never got taught that, because you might have a really cool bishop who's more open. You might have parents who are a little bit more educated and
Or
be that way.
leader that
Doesn't give you the chewed gum talk, right?
The shriveled up flower,
Oh, is that what you got?
the red splatter and the white paint, all the things.
Oh, my
Yeah.
favorite one is the shit and the brownies.
Oh, I've
Did
never
you ever-
heard that one.
Yeah, so basically it's a kid wanted to see a rated R movie, and the dad was like, why do you want to see a rated R? He's like, well, Dad, there's only a couple of bad parts in it. There's like one bad scene, and the rest of it is fine. And the dad's like, okay, fine, go see your movie. So then the kid sees the movie, come back. Dad's like, I made you brownies. Do you want a brownie? And the kid's like, yeah, absolutely, I want a brownie. So the kid eats the brownie. And the dad's like, what if I told you there was poop in that brownie, but only one small part?
Oh.
There's only one piece in this whole tray that has poop in it. I'm like, are you kidding me?
That's a no for me, dog.
Great parenting. Great parenting.
Again, the trauma is so unnecessary.
I know you talked a little bit about dating in the church, dating out of the church. I'm sure we could go on and on about that, but did you notice some key differences between members and non-members when dating men?
When I left the church, I still tended to date Mormons because it was what was comfortable. So the problem was I was too conservative for the non-Mormons and I was too liberal for the Mormons. But generally speaking, yeah, I just found that when I was dating non-Mormons, the topic of sex would come up a lot more. You'd be on your third date and they'd be like, do you want to come home? And I'm like, why would I do that? And part of that's the autism, though. I've never understood hookup culture because I'm like, that seems dangerous and reckless. Also, you don't know that person. And if I tend to lean anywhere, it's more asexual, where I have to know you and love you deeply to even want to do anything like that, even like hold hands. Yeah. And that was hard even growing up in the church because I think it's very quote unquote normal to want to be physical with someone when you're dating them. And I was just not about it. And a lot of times that's why guys would break up with me, was because we get to a certain point and they're like, we haven't even made out yet. I'm like, what's your point? Let's keep talking about astrophysics. We're getting to know each other here, dude. I want to know your brain. And he's like, well, I want to know your boobs. And I'm like, well, then I guess we've reached an impasse. Like, and then you leave. But I mean, there's a reason why I was 38 or 39 when I met my now fiance.
How did you guys meet?
Bumble.
Love it.
Yeah, we love that swipe.
One,
One swipe away.
yeah, forever is one swipe
Yeah,
away.
and
So-
I'm a cougar because he's oh yeah, he's 8 years younger than I am.
We
Amazing.
love that.
Yes,
we do love
he likes
that.
an older woman, and I'm here for it.
So when dating him, was there a conversation of explaining your autism, or do you just kind of lead with that up front?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how was he really great with it.
He was here for it.
Yeah.
Like, he loves my weird ass. He was here for it. I think he definitely has ADHD. So we're both in the family of like not neurotypical. Which, by the way, there's a huge debate on whether we should include ADHD people on the neurodiverse spectrum or whether we should reserve that just for autistic people. I see both arguments. But for the sake of argument, he is not normal. He's weird in his own ways, and I'm weird. And it's been strange to live with someone for the first time and go at it this late in life. Again, I've always been behind my peers by about 10 plus years. So this is actually on time for me.
Yeah.
Feels
Right?
very normal, and you're at the right time.
This was the right time. I was not ready to get married, which again, if we come full circle back to this idea, I understand that the church, there's a lot of really good things about the church. I also think that it can be incredibly destructive and harmful for people who are not able to fit boxes.
The timeline.
So like autistic people who develop slower, I don't think it's a good idea to push them to try and get married in their early 20s. They're not mature enough. And some might be. I can't speak for everyone. I was a child, even in my 20s. I was a child about a lot of things heading into my 30s. There was stuff that I did not understand. And then, yeah, in my late 30s, mid to late 30s, I was like, okay, I feel like I've arrived.
I'm an adult.
Yep.
I know who I am. I'm ready.
I'm ready to take this next step. And it's still been really hard. I struggle every day, and he's very patient with me. He's still learning what it means to be with someone who has autism, who talks in a different language. Because a lot of neurotypical people speak in riddles. And by that, I mean an autistic person is just going to be very blunt with you. But a lot of times out in the world, if you're blunt, people think that you're actually not meaning what you're saying because they're used to people not meaning what they say. But if an autistic person says it to you, 9 times out of 10, they're being very literal, and that's what they mean. But that can be hard to learn. And him dealing with my meltdowns and when I get overstimulated and stuff like that. But if I had gotten married in my 20s, I would have gotten divorced. No question. If I'd gotten married even in my 30s, I would have gotten divorced. I would not have known how to make that work. So this was the right timeline for me. If people hear nothing else on this podcast, I want people to know that regardless of whether you are autistic, allistic, Mormon, not Mormon, just move at your pace. There is no standard. There is no ideal. There is no model. There is no shape that your life is supposed to look like. There is no path that you're supposed to take. Your life is supposed to be yours. Unique, beautiful, messy, and in the timeline. Because so long as you try and meet someone else's expectations or timelines, you are going to be miserable. You're going to be miserable.
I love that. I love
And the
that
sooner you
sentiment.
can learn that
Yeah.
lesson, the better.
Yeah, please,
it
by all
sets you
means.
free.
Right? I wish I had known that in my 20s. I wish someone had told me that.
Like, girl, no pressure. Take your time. Live your
Right.
life. Do the things you love. Enjoy
Go work at the
yourself.
Mayan. Jump off a waterfall.
Have the time of your life and soak it up.
Right. But don't soak.
Yeah.
No, that's a
But,
no.
but not that kind of soaking.
I feel like I could talk to you for literally
hours.
hours.
I know.
It's
Let's
been
keep
so
going.
long.
It's
I
like,
do have the most important question for you, though.
oh, no.
Where is the best donut in Utah, actually?
Okay. There is an answer to this. I will say I've not tried every donut. Okay. There's this random food truck that only appears like on a full moon east of Eden. Like, and apparently that's the best donut in Utah, but I'm sorry, like that's very elusive. So as far as what you could go and get tomorrow, best donut, that would be Fresh Donut in Delhi. It's off of State Street and about 2700 South. It's this completely unassuming, it looks divey, I'm sorry, but it is like an elevated Krispy Kreme. So when you go there, you will get an original glazed because it will be the best glazed donut you've ever had in your life. And you will get the apple fritter. And if you're lucky, you'll get them when they are warm. And it will change your life.
Literally had one the other day.
Did you?
Really?
So you know.
So good.
So you know.
My husband's family all work in South Salt Lake, and that's their donut place.
Yeah, people talk about Banbury or whatever. Like, it can't even come close.
But for me, it's the cake glazed.
yeah,
But they're never there. They're always sold out, the cake glaze.
it's so good. And I'll tell you, the difference is in the oil, because a crappy donut, you can taste the oil it was fried in. Theirs tastes like happiness on a plate. And then second to that, Donut Boy has a pretty good donut. Shout out to them. They got a great one. And then just the other day for National Donut Day, we tried Parlor Donuts, which just opened in Pleasant Grove. Now, to be fair, not a traditional donut. It's definitely a cronut. It has like a croissant sort of texture to it, but it's crispy on the outside. It is so soft on the inside. It was good. I don't feel like it can go head to head with Fresh Deli because it's just not the same
It's like a
thing.
different category.
It has its own category, but holy crap.
I want to try it because I keep seeing billboards.
Yeah, we could have spent this whole time
talking donuts.
talking about
donuts.
food. Just food.
Yeah.
You're definitely coming back because I feel like we brushed the
Skimmed the
surface. Yeah,
surface.
for so many little
Right?
topics, we could have
We
dived in. Like,
teased.
I'm like, wait, I want your opinion on this and this and this.
And teased and teased and teased.
I
So
also have one
anytime.
last question for you.
Okay.
What do you feel like is your biggest Utah guilty pleasure? Like maybe a part of the culture or something that you're like, I should hate this, but I secretly love it.
Man.
Or that you lean into, or that you maybe wouldn't want to admit that you love.
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. I actually don't know. I think if I were to say anything, it's probably that I've had extensions. I definitely have an obsession with my hair. If you watch my TikToks right now, it's all about like, what am I going to do with my hair? Because I literally can't keep it the same for more than a year at a time. This is driving me insane because I got it back to its natural color and I've been growing it out after like a big chop. I was a redhead for a decade.
Really?
And everyone thought I was a natural redhead. And now I'm just like, maybe platinum. Maybe I do a Bixie. Maybe I shave my head. But I love extensions because hair is one of my autistic fixations. So I obsess about hair. When I meet people, the first thing I notice about them is their hair. And that's embarrassing. But have I spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars putting extensions in, taking them out, putting them in and taking them out? Because the aesthetic of it is chef's kiss. My sensory issues cannot deal.
because
Not
it's like
worth
you
it.
can't.
Just
Can't do it.
Itch.
Every time they would get moved up and they'd be tight, I literally would lay in bed and have an autistic freak out. There was one night I remember I almost took a pair of scissors and cut them out myself. But I would say that's probably it, is I do kind of fall into that whole I was that girl with the extensions down to my waist, and because it's just there's something about mermaid hair.
We're here for
There's
it.
something about mermaid hair.
Britty, thank you so much for coming on. This was so much fun.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you're so funny. You're so
Looking?
funny. Yes.
Thank you.
Where can people follow you?
So on TikTok, I actually have 2 accounts.
What? You have a secret second account that
do.
we haven't found yet? Okay.
But
It's where I
don't
get
follow-
real. Don't follow if you want to have any respect for me. So Salty Zebra Pie is my second account. It's much smaller, but if you want the real Britty, like unfiltered, not safe for the workplace kind of opinions and hot takes, go to Salty Zebra Pie. My bemusing page on TikTok, that is more of a, I guess what I would consider a commercial page. That's where you get more of the funny like Utah stuff or the sketches or the stuff with my fiance reviewing things. I like to keep my world separate because that's how my brain works. So yeah, Instagram is very bemusing and TikTok is bemused, I think. So
We'll link
so I
it.
put
We'll
in.
link-
That's kind of it. Occasionally you can see me performing live on stages here because I still do musical theater.
Are you in a play right now?
I'm not. No,
You're not?
no. I was working backstage for Finding Neverland. I was the dog wrangler, which is the most amazing job ever. I literally just take care of a dog because they have a live dog in it.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
So I'm the dog attendant. It's so good. But I have some projects coming up. I just can't announce them yet because they haven't been publicly announced.
Okay,
No,
well, we're
no.
excited.
And then don't show up at my house
Yeah.
because I'll
Call the cops.
I'll call the cops.
And your parents.
You can say hi to me if you see me in person. I'm cool with that. We get recognized sometimes. It's weird that actually happens. But if you see me in person, you can say hi. Just be respectful, right? People usually are. And outside of that, leave me the crap alone. Just enjoy my content.
Yeah.
Let me be me. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Perfect way to end it. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we will talk to you guys later.
Yes, love you.
Love you. Bye.